Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam. That was very forthright then, wasn't it? My name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings. I've just been faffing around with my camera and this recording on several levels, having to turn the sound up, having to increase the noise, the voice that is coming through, having the ability to listen to that, declining the fact that I needed to turn the brightness of my camera up because that really put a focus on my face, and also being acutely aware that the camera is showing more of my environment than it is myself. Many things coming up this week in regards to the situations we find ourselves in regards to what is coming up for us to hear. And why? It's all about increasing the light. It's all about increasing the way that we see ourselves and the way that we hear ourselves. It's going to be constant, okay? If we can feel into the changes that want to be part of our journey now. This morning when I first tuned into the energies of the day, I'm not going to lie to you or myself, I really wasn't feeling it. My hips hurt, my back hurt. I'd woke up with this version of myself at the end of the bed, rolling their sleeves up, ready to basically tell me all the things I hadn't achieved. My mindset was in a very, not negative, not positive, present state. Now I say that because yes, there were stories related to my past coming up with that. Yes, there were ancestral things coming up with that. Yes, there were future things coming up with that. You know, my mother's anniversary of her funeral was on Wednesday. I'm really feeling the same kind of pains that she had. I'm really feeling ancestrally the same limitations that my matriarchal line has had. I'm very aware of the shifts that want to happen. I'm acutely aware of the fact that we've just gone through Imbolc, that we're not in the spring equinox yet, that there's that desire for things to shift and change now, but there's that transition moment of feeling into everything that's breaking us open, right? When we think about Imbolc, we think about all the seeds that are coming up from the earth. They're splitting open. In order for there to be that new growth, there's a pulling apart of what was. So yes, this morning I could have gone down any one of those roads, those well-trodden paths, it being linked to my past, it being about my future plans, but actually in the present moment it was very important to feel like I needed to know what I was feeling. I needed to know what was going on, and in that moment I was fed up, and that was okay. To sense into that. From there, with honesty, with authenticity, not to anyone else or my environment or anything else that was going on, without linking it to anything else, which, let's face it, we can do that. We are all so affected by our environment. We can always find a quote-unquote reason for whatever is going on without doing any of that, and purely sitting with what I felt and being honest with what was going on for me. There was a real knowing that I needed to up my game and fight for myself. I'd love to change the word fight, but that is what we are facing this week. We are facing a conflict with where we were, where we would like to be, but more importantly, where we are. None of those things can be changed. Our perspective of our past, if we choose to have it shifted, cannot happen. And our plans for our future cannot be formed if we continue to have conflict with where we are, uncreative, unconstructive conflict with where we are. It's not about enjoying the things that we don't enjoy. It's not about accepting and not changing, but it is about awareness this week. We cannot shift that we do not see. Which can be uncomfortable, right? I've just come back from a walk outside. I was determined to go for a walk before I needed to get away from the situation before I even attempted to comment on it. And that feels really quite important this week, to have some time away from what is going on, or to step back in order to truly observe and witness the environment we may be finding ourselves in. Why? Because it's without that enmeshed in the situation. So I went for a walk and a dance, and listening to some music that I really, really enjoy. I found it quite difficult to tread the path when I was outside because it's been wet, right? It's been wet and other people have stepped on that path. So walking in their footsteps was incredibly difficult. Finding my own was incredibly difficult. And what that helped me to do was to find time and grounding, extra grounding this week, extra connection to our feet and upon the belly of the earth and the very path that we are deciding to walk. That's not to say we can't tread in the footsteps of others, but to recognise that we may find that difficult as we try and find our own route within that. Route being the operative word. Anything else? That feels enough, actually. That feels enough. It feels like there can be a temptation to question what we have given, whether that will be clear enough, whether we can gain the clarity that we need in the answers that we have sought and the messages that we have found around us. And what that does, that makes us question and doubt our own vision, not just from what we can see around us, but how we see ourselves and our own potential. Okay, so it can be simple this week. It may not feel like it. It may feel as if it's muddy, as if it's kind of no sense, no reason, but it can be simple purely by stepping back, witnessing the environment we find ourselves in with authenticity and trusting that that awareness alone can be enough to shift us, minus the judgments. And that's the key, isn't it? If we look at something, so this morning, of course, I was pissed off to feel the way I feel, you know, not only that, but what a great sales tactic, you know, a quote unquote healer that can hardly walk in the morning. That's not how we expect to see the world, because that's from a place of judgment, right? We have this belief that healers or certain areas are without pain or seen in a certain light. And this week, one of the beautiful things is we're going to be encouraged to look at how we see ourselves and how we believe we should be behaving based on what we do and who we are. I went to Marwell Zoo this weekend, felt a real calling to go to Marwell Zoo, and thankfully my husband is so used to me. The place was packed and the calling was to restore balance with the animals that were there. And I'm not going to go into all of their individual stories, just like I wouldn't people. But from my perspective, to do that whilst there was pens full of people was quite daunting. And at one point I zone out when I do it, and at one point came back and I saw my husband looking at me, and I did say to him, what did you think? You know, was I stood there like, oh, because I have this real chip on my shoulder of what it means to be a healer, what that actually looks like, because it's what you see, right? Actually, he said no one else would have noticed. It was only because he knew what I was doing and he knew who I was. So this week, looking at where we may be holding ourselves back based on how we believe something to be, based on how we believe something needs to come across. Okay, so I do work with balancing energy and I work with the body and I'm fucking good at it. But sometimes, well, a lot of the times I get that experience and that wisdom by going through my own process as well. That's part of it, which means sometimes I wake up sore too. We're human, right? We're here for the human experience. So recognizing the path that we are walking, recognizing the shadows we may be walking in and how difficult that can make our path. That doesn't mean we have to change it unless we feel drawn to, but just to give ourselves a little bit more compassion, a little bit more rooting into the human experience that is occurring for us individually with authenticity. When I went to Marwell Zoo, when I go to any zoos, you know, for me, animals, I fully respect the work that is being done and I acknowledge the help that has been raised and the conservation efforts. But for me, I want to see animals in the wild. Of course, we all do, right? So it can be quite emotional to go to these places. However, when I went there, it was more about witnessing these incredible souls in their own environment. This week, allowing yourself to see yourself in the environment that you're in. Before we start changing and shifting, acknowledging that that awareness in itself will restore balance by highlighting things that you may not like. And without that judgment, appreciating them for the message that they are. We are in the space between Imbolc and spring. We are to be expected to be pulled apart with certain things that may be working and may not be working in order to bring forth something different, something new. Okay, so you may find yourself not having energy. This morning I was quite exhausted actually, and I just wanted to get outside and just be with my body. You may find yourself having lots of energy. Whatever is coming through for you right now, being true to that, being honest with that, is what's actually going to bring you the answers that you seek on the path that you walk. Stepping back from the judgment of how you think you should be, where you think you should be, what you think should be happening, and actually feel into what is. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave it at that, because it does feel important to recognize that it can be that simple and it can be that easy, and we can go over and over and over the same message, which I have a tendency to do, but recognizing where that comes from. The cards I'm going to work with when I look into the energies this week are the Tarot of the New Vision. Now, the reason that I picked these was, one, the new vision. Then I started to get into a bit of a tiz was, there's a lot of cards in here I've not looked at properly, so I don't know the meaning of them, which I rarely look at the books anyway. But also, are we ready for a new vision? That really kept coming up. Are we ready for a new vision? Well, the beauty of these cards is they're still based on the structure of the old Rider-Waite. They are just a sneak peek into what lies beyond what we already know, with the foundation of what we have discovered. And that feels really important. In order to have a new vision, we have to be aware of the sight that we carry. Okay, and how that forms how we then see things, ourselves included. Okay. So these are by Giordano Berti and Tiberio Conard. I apologise if I've really just pronounced that atrociously. Something there about our native tongue. Yeah, the voice, the okay, where are you going with that? So I know we're in the Hermit year and it is a time of completion. However, it feels like a very mental energy. Of course, we are in the north of what we would call the medicine wheel. So we are in the air element. We are still in the place of the unknown. There are certain things coming to light as we step into spring, as we go into the east of the medicine wheel. There are certain things that are encouraging us to take a wider perspective, just like the apogee, just like the eagle or the condor would in the space of the east. But we are still in the place of the north. That is in the mind here. Okay, so recognizing the language that is native to your soul. We can only do that if we choose and take time to listen to what that is. Okay, so speaking your own truth to yourself. One of the posts I shared today, there's this big thing about faking it until you make it, and that did work. That really did work. That worked in order to shift our perspective, in order to be positive when times were really hard, in order to give us that hope and that, I want to say fragility, but that hope in times of fragility. However, the body keeps the score. Great book, by the way. But the body knows what is going on. The body's role is to pick up what's going on in the environment. And if we choose not to see that, we're going to cause a conflict in our mind and in our actual real lived experiences, in our reality. Okay, and that there feels like a bit of a tear actually in the reality at the moment. And we talk about timelines, we talk about different time loops and all that kind of thing. But we can have tears in our own vision of our own reality. We can have tears with what is actually going on for us, because we can question what we're feeling in our mind because we may not like it, or we may want it to be different. Well, heads up, pun intended, it can't be different until we acknowledge what it is. Okay, so having that space and listening and witnessing yourself, or getting someone that can this week, is going to be key, and being open to any of the reflections that you see back. I shared with some really dear friends of mine this weekend some of the insights that I received from Mawazu, and they were quite, I'd gone on this whole vision quest, and they were really intense. Actually, they were really intense, but my goodness, by having that expanded awareness, which isn't just a gift for me, it's for us all. We all have the ability to see the energy in things. We all have the ability to feel into what is going on for us and to go beyond our restricted senses and tune them all together. We all have a sixth sense or shamanic perspective. By doing that this weekend, yeah, it was like a full-on reading and rebalancing and healing. So of course, no wonder this morning I'm going to feel a little bit as if things are trying to integrate and change. Really look of what is going on. Really feel, really sense, really be present with what is going on, or not. But you know, the less present we are, which normally comes from fear or a belief that we're running out of time, or, oh, I haven't got time to be present, the less present we are, the longer it's going to take. It's about working with our body, not against it. Okay, one, to cause less trauma, and two, to actually speed up whatever you're trying to achieve here. Right, so that in mind, let's look at the energies this week and how to best navigate them. I almost feel like I want to lean into what's going on in the sky, what's going on astrologically, what's going on around me, and when I do that I can take a nice seat back. No, this week there is, and hey, you get your reflections and your wisdom however you get it, but there is a temptation to step back from it all and just watch everything else that's going on. Yes, to an extent, but there's also an invitation to recognize the impact that has on yourself, and also perhaps where there may be reluctancy to see what's going on for ourselves as well. Only then are we going to see what we're carrying, what we're actually carrying. There's a lot being taken into 2025. A lot of paths being retrod, and it's not about releasing it all, but at least having awareness of it so we can have informed consent. That feels quite important, informed consent. Okay, energies this week. It's a week of transformation. It's a week of magic. It's a week of paths being cleared. It's a week of light returning, not necessarily outside, although we may see that, but definitely a week of light returning for ourselves. It's a turning point. Okay. And how do I know that? Well, I just got that from a painting by the side of me. So the ability to really look deeper into what you can see and to trust what you know as a result. Okay. Knight of Pentacles at the bottom of the pack. This card is practically the same. Okay, so knowing that the vision is practically the same, it's not about noticing the big changes, but more the unseen parts, the smaller parts that have led to this. So in the Knight of Pentacles, we know it's about grounding. We know it's a knight on their horse, but in this card in particular, I don't know if you can see it, there's a ox and a character, you can't quite see it, in the background doing the hard work. Recognizing what gives you grounding, what gives you rooting, is acknowledging the work that you have put in. So the presence, yes, we can see that we may not quite be where we want to be, but once we do that, we can also then see what we have achieved. Okay, so it's a doorway, it's an opening into becoming more grounded in the present moment and the experience and the wisdom gained so far. Underneath that, of course, we have the Queen of Pentacles, nurturing that connection. Okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Overall, yeah, I do feel a tiredness, and it's quite evident in the cards this week. I do feel quite a tiredness. Being in between those openings, it's not endings. They're not endings this week. They may feel like it, but they are openings. Being in between the openings and the beginnings can be quite tiring, and that is quite evident throughout the rest of the reading. On the Monday, we have the Tower card. Big shifts coming, big changes coming. Just when we think nothing, just when we think we've seen it all. No, just when we think nothing is shifting, nothing is changing. By going into that energy, as I've said before, it's that's actually going to shift it itself. By going into that wisdom of knowing things can't carry on the way that they are. They can't carry on the way that they are. And we only get to that point by really feeling into the things that we may not like. Okay, and being honest with where we are, where we would like to be. So for me this morning, there was a definite truth that I don't fight as hard for myself as I do for others. And that's an uncomfortable truth, but it's a truth I need to acknowledge if I'm going to shift things. Okay, and then from that perspective, being aware and allowing the awareness to do the unraveling, nothing more is needed. So in the Tower card, there's a knowing that where we are is unsustainable, but then there's a surrender. Okay, so having that conversation with yourself, allowing that conversation to be heard by your higher self, the powers that be, whatever you want to look at it from that perspective, and then just watching it crumble, yourself included, having compassion for that, witnessing that. Because on the Tuesday, what happens then is we have the Sun card. What happens then? So is there any difference in the Tower card? Not really. And that's the beautiful thing, isn't it? With these new visions, even though they're called the new vision, there isn't a huge difference here, apart from the fact that you can see the tree of life at the bottom, the tree that's in the Lovers card, the tree that has the apples and the wisdom of our own body, of our own connection here, of our own life's purpose here, and the serpent around it. So it feels quite important to acknowledge that it is the year of the snake, that the snake in our medicine wheel is about connecting to the earth, connecting to the physical body, shedding our stories, but in doing so remembering that the snake's skin still has the whole imprint of the story, and the snake that is left afterwards still has that imprint, still has that DNA there. So it's not about shedding who we are, but it's about shedding all the things that stand in the way of our own awareness and appreciation of that on the Monday. On the Tuesday, then we have the Sun card. So then we actually see from behind. On the Sun card, we don't see the child. We see behind the child, and we see the light that is now available. So it feels almost as if there's been a lot of inner child work done, a lot of inner child connection, and it's about allowing that inner child now to be free, to be a child, so that the adult self can come in as the light that it has now gained and direct the path forward. On the Wednesday, we have the Queen of Swords. So there is that more upright, mature connection. There is that more feminine rooting. Discernment, that's the word that I hear, discernment. And in this card again, there isn't much change. I can see an extra red thread around her wrist, and the sword is upright. Okay, so it feels very much in relation to our matriarchal relationships. So the Wednesday for me is the day of my mother's anniversary, but it feels almost as if the 5th of February is quite a pivotal point of how we see the mother, how we connect to the mother, how we become the mother, because that's the other thing with the serpent on our medicine wheel. It is about our connection to Pachamama and the path upon her belly, and initiating a more gentle approach as we walk the journey that we're here to walk. So looking at that path that we're treading in, recognizing how many women have walked before us, how many women are going to walk after, what is the legacy that we're going to leave them, what is the direction that we are going to invite within our own life, and thus those that then follow. Discernment is key. Discernment with our own self as well. On the Thursday, we then have the Six of Pentacles, and in this, again, all you can see is the back of the characters, which is really, really interesting. So it's almost as if we're looking from the past perspective in what is occurring. And that feels quite important as we come to Thursday, looking at where we may see flow of relationship or abundance, or what we give and what we receive from a past perspective. Now, I can really take that on board with some of the things that have been coming up this week. But acknowledging why we allow that to happen, acknowledging the imbalance in our lives and the responsibility of ourselves now to restore that, so that we're not begging ourselves for attention. So that, again, an example, so that it hasn't got to a point where I'm struggling to walk before I bring back my own yoga practice. You know, really stepping up and looking after ourselves come the Thursday, making those decisions that are going to be right for us as we start to lead into the full moon in Leo the following week, which is ironically on my grandmother's birthday. So there's definitely something there with the matriarchal line, but acknowledging what we are choosing to carry from the matriarchal line. Now, I don't mean just the females in our family. I mean how we nurture, how we receive, our intuition, our connection to the earth, how we communicate that wisdom with ourselves and with others. On the Friday, we have the Ten of Wands, and what you can see here is what he's actually carrying. Normally in this deck, you see that this character is carrying things, but you don't see it so close up. On the Friday, being really made aware of what we have been allowing to block our own vision of what we have been carrying, of where we have been struggling. In the background, there's a masculine figure again. So that's two masculine figures. In the background, there's a masculine figure here, and he again is toiling away at the crops. Okay, so looking at where our actions have harvested where we are, positive and negative. So the tarot has no good or bad, it's polarities, right? It's just the opposites of each other. You can't have one without the other. Okay, so recognizing where you have worked really hard and the experiences that you've gained, and recognizing perhaps where you can allow some of them to be put to the side now, particularly in regards to the stories behind the experiences. Yeah, so again, always been a fighter my whole life, and that's incredible. That really puts a great strength in a lot of my relationships and what I'm driven for. Has that story continued with myself? Not so much. Okay, so that gives me an imbalance. So really, by the Friday, seeing what we're holding on to, the narrative behind our behaviors. It's not about our behaviors, but it's about the reason behind them. Where are they coming from? On the Saturday, we have the Four of Cups. And again, you see this character from behind. But because you see this character from behind, because we can see our own despondency from the past, we get to see what we haven't noticed before with this Cup card. And that is Pegasus, the horse, the winged messenger, the more pure power that may have been, hinted at on the Tuesday, coming forward to guide us. When we let go of the weight of who we are, the judgments of who we are, how we think we should be based on generations before us, or what we see around us, when we release that and can actually allow space for something new to come in, we are guided by our own divine purity, our own light forward. We make our own path. On the Sunday, that's going to be evident in the Stars card. And this one's called the Stars card. So it's not just about the one vision. There's several visions here, but acknowledging what one is going to inspire you, what one is going to set you alight. Because on this card, there's a star carved into the ground and it has a flame coming up from it. It's almost burning the naked figure's bottom. Okay, so there is a deep transformation in our root connection to who we are, the path that we walk, the relationships that we're in, the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and the vision that we hold as a result. In the background, there is another male character walking away. It looks very symbolic of the Fool, but it isn't. He's got a very heavy bag and he's walking away. So deciding this week what we choose to carry, deciding what experiences we're going to take forward, deciding how that impacts our relationships and the balance that we now need in our life, stepping up and adulting ourselves. There's been a lot of situations where perhaps the inner child or the innocence has been ruling the roost. Overall, we have Temperance, only Temperance is actually reversed here. Now, I love the fact that Temperance is reversed, because what that does, you can see the fire sign on the back here between the shoulder blades, but what that also does is allow the crown of Temperance to come to earth, to allow all of those ideas, those visions, that enlightenment to come down through our body and ground and root in authentically with truth, understanding and compassion this week. It's not a time for lofty ideas, even though we have the Star card, even though we have the Sun card, the Tower card and Temperance. It's not a time for lofty ideas. It's about bringing those ideas down, nurturing them, giving them the time, the space, the balance to become what they need to become. And in order to do that, that does mean we're going to be encouraged to look at things that we have no space for, that we have no time for, particularly our own stories, morals, compass even for some people. And yes, that does mean that we're opening ourselves up to something different. And that can be, we may want it now, yeah? We may want it now. We may not want to be in our body and take time and feel what is going on because we believe we're running out of time, or we may think that it's pointless. There's a hint of spring in the air that's so tempting to listen to and want to follow immediately that we can forget where we are. There's a hint of new beginnings, and it smells beautiful. It smells great, but it isn't quite here yet. It isn't quite here yet. This is an opportunity to make space for it. Really feeling into, as we lead into next week, what inspires you? What ignites you to get your ass into gear? What makes you think, I want something different? It may be the things that you don't like that help inspire or ignite you. It may not, but it may be, and being open to that. Okay, so overall, 4 major arcanas. So the foundations and the structure. Interestingly, we have 4 minor arcanas as well. So there's a real universal balance here with our human actions. The more we can see our connection to the earth in what we see and how we react from that, the more divine we're going to feel. We're not going to feel as if we're a victim of circumstance. We're not going to feel as if things can't change. We're not going to feel as if we're on our own. That's the other thing that could come through as we lead into the full moon. There may be a feeling of, in order to be a witness, we have to walk away from it all, or in order to be fully understood, we have to separate ourselves from situations. And that may bring up the older narrative of that being alone. The more we connect to our body, the more we connect to the universe. The more we connect to the universe, the more our needs are met. We are going to be really reminded of this flow. And that's where I want to bring Temperance in and actually turn her up right now. It can feel as if we've had to step back and totally almost disassociate from what is going on. And it's not, that's not witnessing. That's not observing, not being affected by it all. That doesn't mean that you're having empathy. That just means you're being shut off. And whatever works for you, right? But there is a difference. To witness is to be moved, but also to know what is moving you, to know your stance on something so that you can truly witness other perspectives as well. If we don't know what we're seeing and we don't know what we're feeling, how on earth do we know what is ours and what is other people's? There's a big risk this week of codependency, of reactions. And again, if that works for you, that works for you. But what we're actually being called to do is to step back and witness ourselves so that we can see the bigger picture. And from there, things are very likely to shift quite quickly towards the light that we are. Because it's not then about this inner, younger, less mature energy. There's a big difference between the inner wild and the inner child, okay? And this week we're going to be reminded of that, or at least the wounded inner child. There's a big difference. Once we can observe, once we can witness the changes that have happened, that are happening, that need to happen, and nurture and care for anything that comes up as a result, particularly in our fear of the unknown and the innocence that we now need with ourselves, the vision becomes clearer, because we walk away from the distractions. We walk away from the ideas that are loftier than where we find ourselves. That's not to say that they will never happen, but we can hold space for what we want long term and still put in place smaller steps towards that. And that's the energy that we're being encouraged to do this week. I almost see like summer, people wanting it to be summer, full bloom, loads of all at once. That growth is a gradual process. Acknowledging that, respecting that within yourself as well, finding your own cycle with this. So then we have literally one of every minor arcana. We have one sword card, one pentacle card, one wand card, and one cup card. So it's new beginnings with every aspect elementally. Elementary, my dear Watson, elementally this week. When it comes to our mind, the new beginning is going to come from a more mature, nurturing, feminine approach. Okay, being aware of what we're seeing and not having to keep going over it in our actions, because that can often come from a place where we doubt what we know. So really standing in that, and every time we wobble, every time our mind suggests otherwise, really looking at what needs nurturing in order to believe in ourselves. When it comes to the physical body this week, it is about listening. Do we feel tired? Are we giving when we need to be receiving? Are we receiving when we need to be giving? Acknowledging the balance or imbalances in our lives, starting with ourselves and then our relationships and our circumstances and where we are and where we would like to be. That takes presence. Recognizing we are the very center of the scales, not having to beg yourself for your own attention, not having to beg yourself for your own compassion and your own love this week, really acknowledging that you are the center of all things that you are trying to achieve, and having some bloody respect for that. When the new beginning comes from letting go of carrying too much, creatively, spiritually, ambitious wise, recognizing whose ambitions we are carrying, what is success, what does that mean to you, acknowledging the work that you have put in, letting go of the stuff that is repetitive. Okay, so that you don't have to keep repeating these things and exhausting yourself out creatively and spiritually. Because where does that come from? If we're going over the same things, whether it's our mindset, our emotions, our wounds, whatever that is, if we're continuing to go over them, we're not trusting that we're done with them. What needs nurturing underneath that? Well, when it comes to our emotions, it's boredom. It's apathy. It's having that moment in between, the pause where we think, I need to be doing something. I'm not doing enough. It's worth here this week emotionally. So mind clear, nurtured, feminine, looked after, direct, body in balance. What do I need? Have I taken care of my basic needs? Creativity, ambition. What am I carrying here? What stories no longer serve the bigger narrative that I'm trying to achieve? Emotionally, do I feel worthy? Pausing, taking time, allowing things to come to me as well. Collaboration is a communication. Okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve. This is the question that I've asked. This is fill in your X, Y, and Z. Wait for the bloody answer. Feel it in your body. Make sure you're aligned to it. Is it possible from where you are? What do you need to put into place? None of this is possible if you don't wait for the answer. The truth of the matter is, the less you wait, the longer it's going to take. If you want something different, wait for something different. I'm going to leave it there. Have the most incredible week, and I shall see you next Monday. Take care.